The other big thing for us at the moment is that in our own data, rosé is in growth and everything else is flat. In fact, red wine is falling back a little bit in the on-trade. And I think this is because I think rosé manages to take drinkers possibly from that G&T experience, that sort of the aperitivo hour, perhaps even from the Aperol Spritz. We feel that red wine isn't able to appeal to people as readily who are younger perhaps.
Hey guys, this is Sid Patel, CEO of London Wine Competition and Beverage Trade Network. We are the 8th annual London Wine Competition. Now we're live in London. I'm here with Frances Bentley. She's, if not correct me, but you're the buyer of the biggest wine wholesaler company in UK, right?
I think we are close to becoming the biggest. I'm not quite sure that we're the biggest, but through a variety of influences from the trade and in terms of our mergers and acquisitions that we've had recently, we are fast becoming the UK's biggest wholesaler, yes.
Great. So again, putting some numbers, almost 10,000 SKUs, based pretty much covering entire UK, and she's based out of Manchester. So I think perfect person to ask on what does a wine importer / wholesaler look for when buying a wine, especially in 2025 in UK, right?
Yeah.
Frances, so why don't we start there?
Okay.
You know, what do you look for in making a decision to add a wine in your portfolio?
It has to make sense for the customers that we have. There's no point in me filling our warehouse with wines that I really love and that I think that are sensible. We need to make sure that everything is fit for purpose for a good on-trade list. So I'm always looking for wines that are in demand in the on-trade in restaurants and bars. So I'm always looking at new trends, not just in the UK but abroad, because often the UK will follow trends that we see on the continent and also in the US. So that's where I think canned wine has come from. Canned wine was a big trend in the US, probably going back about 8 years or so, and now we're finally starting to see it go a bit more mainstream. But things like low and no have been quite popular in the Scandinavians for a long time. So we look for trends that are abroad, but we don't want to be slavish to trends. We want to make sure that the customers have what they need. So I'm looking for value, I'm looking for quality, and I'm looking for good packaging. But I guess that's what everybody would say to you anyway.
That's how we judge as well, right?
Exactly, yes.
So that's amazing to know. You know, let's go a little deeper into the sourcing part, right? Like as far as which regions are you paying more attention to, or more requests are coming from your buyers?
Yeah.
Like, is there any category that you're seeing an uptick on?
Yeah.
Is there any region that you're seeing an uptick on?
The change in the duty regime in the UK has meant that people are looking more closely at lower ABV wines, so anything below about 11% is of particular note at the moment. But I'm also looking at emerging regions. So recently I've listed a new range of wine from Hungary, but we've listed more wines from Romania, from Greece. But also I'm trying to make sure that we have the right wines from some of the countries that maybe in the past were seen as just where you bought cheap wines from. So from Chile, from Argentina, from South Africa, I'm trying to look more at the regionality of these countries to make sure that we're getting the right examples from different places. So if we're looking at Chile, to make sure it's not just all from the Central Valley, to make sure that there's some representation from the Maule, from Maipo, etc., so that we've got a bit more breadth and depth to the range.
Okay, just to understand and break down UK as different geography, you know, your top 10 selling wines in London metro area must be different than, I'm sure, Manchester, Liverpool, or am I wrong there?
I think that there's a lot of overlap, but yes, you're probably right in that there's some differences in for example in Newcastle we see a lot more trend for rosé, and there's a bit more trend for sort of more sweet rosé in some of these markets, whereas in London I think we're selling a bit of a shift away from the Proseccos and into the Cremants, and some of the English sparkling as well has become more popular. But I do buy on a national scale, and I do buy for all of the depots. It's not just about what works where, but we have to have a range as a national wholesaler that works for all of the depots and for all of the customers from Cornwall all the way up to Aberdeen.
I want to go on the data because given the size of your company, I'm sure you would also pay attention to Nielsen or the IRI or
yes, of course.
The data and also the data from the supermarkets.
Yes.
Right? And also your own internal data on where you're seeing the growth in categories or depletions. So can you share us on where all you see and what you're seeing, so producers can maybe extract value from that?
Yes, okay. I think a top line thing is important to note is that we don't think that wine in the UK is growing. We think we're getting more of the piece of the pie, but we don't think that these are new markets necessarily, and I think that we need to spend some time investigating why we're not recruiting more drinkers, but beer and spirits and so on are. The other big thing for us at the moment is that in our own data, and this is also supported by data that we're seeing from CGA and from Nielsen, is that rosé is in growth and everything else is flat. In fact, red wine is falling back a little bit in the on-trade. And I think this is because rosé has managed to capture the drinkers who want I think rosé manages to take drinkers possibly from that G&T experience, that sort of the aperitivo hour, perhaps even from the Aperol Spritz, the consumer. We feel that red wine isn't able to appeal to people as readily who are younger perhaps. I think we're starting to see that with the change in blends that are coming through, where it's a bit more fresh, it's easy, it's lighter in alcohol. I think all of that's important. White wine's still fine, rosé's in growth. I think red wine has some work to do at the moment.
On London Wine Competition, right? What have you liked so far as the judging criteria goes? Would love to have your comment on that.
I like the fact that we're judging in quite small groups, and I think that the length of the flights is sensible, but I like the fact that when we're judging value is seen as a separate entity to the quality, which I think is important, and not everybody does that. But also the fact that we get to make a comment on the packaging as well is really important, because even if the liquid is amazing, if the bottle isn't right or the label isn't quite correct, that can impact on the rate of sale. We are constantly at LWC as well looking for improvements and tweaks that we can make to the wines, that we have to make them as appealing as we can and to give the most value. Packaging should be seen as part of the value of the wine, and I think it's frustrating when some suppliers don't see that or don't understand our point of view when we're looking at listing a wine in terms of how the packaging should look for the UK market.